Hi, Anthony. Very nice to
Hello.
talk to you today. Thanks very much for taking the time. Anthony Manning from the University of Kent, where you're Dean for Internationalisation. You got in touch with me to say how important you thought comprehensive internationalisation was in general, but perhaps particularly at this moment. But let's start off by talking about that. And is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people may have different conceptions of comprehensive internationalisation. Perhaps we can start off by saying what it means in your context.
Well, for me, and I know for many of my colleagues at the University of Kent and those that I'm more closely networked with, I think it means inclusion and a kind of pervasive approach to internationalisation, which involves all stakeholders, all students, staff, and if possible, alumni and connections in the wider world. So certainly that's been my approach, with a view to bringing all those needs and wants together and to create a community under the auspices of the university, which is rich and diverse and supports that kind of idea of critical thinking that we're all striving for.
Mm, yeah, and you were talking before we started. You were talking about the this involving all students, and whether they're international students or domestic or whatever, and all aspects of the curriculum. So I think we're going to go on to talk about some of those things as well. It's interesting to hear you explain what you mean by comprehensive internationalisation, because I think at the other end of the spectrum, sometimes people talk about it being more from an organisational, a strategic, institutional perspective, and perhaps less about the students sometimes. So it's great to be talking about the students. Now, you said that you thought we needed to be extremely creative around the student experience, and I think you've got some examples of that, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that, whether the international student experience first.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to what you said originally about the sort of the different approaches, I think in a sense, if you look after the international experience and you truly create an environment that students from all over the world see themselves in and see themselves benefiting from, then in a sense that supports those institutional drivers that are so important. So certainly, so that is important. But for me, I mean, I've always approached both my strategic activity and my classroom-based activity with the sense that ultimately we're providing this and designing this and collaborating with students for their needs to be met. And so what we wanted to do is make the most of the environment that we have, the very rich environment that we have, and to draw as many people into that and make as many people feel included within that as possible. And so that's where I think I come in terms of internationalization and or global engagement, or whatever you want to call it. But in my mind, it's about sort of generating and drawing on all those amazing resources that we find within the minds of our students and the staff and the partners in various other ways that we work with. So we tried to approach that through mechanisms within the formal and the informal curriculum. So within the formal curriculum, certainly tried to tackle approaches which seek to embed internationalized learning outcomes within the curriculum, the formal credit-bearing curriculum, so that colleagues are, in a sense, encouraged and in some ways, dare I say, forced to write into their module design considerations which develop internationalized thinking or inclusivity or alternative approaches to solving problems drawn from international sources. But then around,
can I, before you go on to your next example, can I just ask how you've actually done that? You say you say, dare I say, forced, but so it's obviously a strategic initiative. How have you actually encouraged people to embed internationalized learning outcomes into their modules?
So we went through a formal process of engaging with the relevant areas of the university to change module descriptions, but then obviously that's just the tip of the iceberg, because we all know that modules and programs can sometimes include clauses which are paid lip service to in terms of the true meaningful nature of what they represent. So then around that, we've tried to work on training mechanisms for colleagues to understand how they can unpack the various avenues for curriculum internationalisation, particularly drawing on books, some of the ones in the Routledge series, and also particularly Betty Leask's book, which I think quite neatly identifies how you can unpack curriculum internationalisation and how it doesn't have to be the same thing for everybody, how different academic disciplines could reach for different tools to support the embedding of internationalisation within their various curricula. So particularly working with different colleagues in different areas of the university, I found that empowering, because immediately many people come to the table thinking they're forced to do something in a particular way when actually they can find things that are usable, relevant to the way that they would approach it in their discipline.
And are you still in the process of doing that now? Is it working?
Yeah, I mean, that's a never-ending spinning wheel, isn't it? I think we also have a module within our PGCHE which new lecturers take, so I contribute to that, to sessions on curriculum internationalisation, which is good to get people at the beginning of their careers, as well as continual opportunities. And then we have a range of spin-off activities which, in addition to the core mechanisms for embedding internationalisation within credit-bearing activity, allow people to add in other opportunities along the way, which themselves on their own may not be enough, but can make meaningful contributions to the core, I think.
Are you still talking about the formal curriculum there? Are you talking about electives or?
Well, we have got electives, but then we run, for example, for students, we run also the credit-bearing and a non-credit-bearing course, which we call Global Officers Leadership Development Programme, which brings together a group of students that then have a key role in designing and running internationalisation at home events across the academic year, which are designed obviously for home and international students, to build that kind of networking community.
And would that be more informal curriculum as well? Because I know you've got a lot of informal curriculum activities going on as well.
Yeah, so there's a credit-bearing version of that, but there's also a non-credit-bearing version, and we have all sorts of different informal opportunities. So we redesigned our induction events a few years ago. We used to have this big formal sit-down dinner that cost a lot of money, that international students were invited to, sitting around dinner tables, which people were aghast when we suggested we remove. But by removing it, we've been able to design a series of 6 or 7 different events that run across the year that bring both home and international students together. And for us, that's been really transformational, because we get our current students involved in designing those events, so they're co-created by students for students, and then it's also, there's evidence of it, bringing the community together in useful ways, rather than this sit-down dinner where you're just plonked next to somebody who you may never see again.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think the one of the things that people say is a problem in terms of getting international and domestic students together is if you call it international or global, then it tends to be attended by the international students. But the idea of using students as co-creators is a really great idea. And do you change the titling of it to deal with that issue?
For me, I think global is a better title than international. There seems to be a more inclusive feel to global. It's difficult, isn't it? We're not yet there within our institutions where collaboration and cross connections between different groups of students are as ideal as they would be. So of course, in an ideal world, we wouldn't need to create opportunities for people to mix in these ways. They would simply be generated through organic meetings themselves. But we know that people come to the classroom, come to the university with different experiences, different cultural norms. And so it does seem to be the case that we can still derive benefit from encouraging collaboration in this way. And if we have internationalisation in mind, to bring international students into that room, I think we still need some of those titles for them to feel sufficiently welcome. But there's still work to do massively to help home students understand why they should be learning from, you know, international minds and international colleagues.
I guess you've got you'll have quite a diverse local population where you are based in
yeah, we have.
Yeah.
So we've got one of the highest BAME populations of a university in the UK as well, which is another great source of diversity for us.
And do you manage to ensure that people from all the different communities are integrating into these various events that you have?
Yeah. Try to. So we have obviously we have our Medway campus as well as our Canterbury campus. So we try to run these events and activities also at both those campuses. And actually those campuses have different student demographics as well. Often the students in the Medway campus are students who've come from London and maybe commuting in. And whilst on the Canterbury campus, there's a different range of subjects and more international students coming to that location. So that both of those activities that we run at both locations have a different feel and have different events organised according to that makeup. And actually, it's one great thing about moving more into this area of both formal and informal opportunities for curriculum internationalisation has been the conference that we've developed over the last couple of years, the Internationalisation at Home conference, which we were delighted to bring around 17 different speakers from universities across the UK and overseas last year. And we were about to be running the next version of the conference until the current situation with the pandemic stopped us. But I'm hoping that we can revitalise that with an online alternative later in the year.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear all about all the things you're doing, and because I think it's the danger is that we read about all these things in books and we don't actually think about how we're going to apply them in context. So it's great to hear how you're doing this and all of the different activities you're doing, and hopefully I'll get to come to one of those conferences one of these days when we're allowed to travel again. Yeah,
that would be lovely.
Thanks so much for speaking to me today, and it's really interesting to hear all the stuff that you're doing, Anthony. Thanks again.
Nice to talk to you too. Thank you.